So I don't know about you guys, but life has been a bit difficult recently. It's so relentless, life. It just keeps happening, day after day. And soon enough, the things that we care about become background noise to the day in and day out necessities that our lives demand from us. That's why I carved out 5 whole working days in the pristine landscape of the Blue Mountains to work on the demo for my upcoming RTS game, Grovekeeper. So over the course of the week, with the help and guidance of my mentor and colleague, Brendan, we managed to get all of the best ideas in Grovekeeper down and consolidate them within this single demo, with a huge UI overhaul to go along with it. The game looks and plays better than ever, and I'm getting excited about making other people excited about it too. So let's have a look at the improvements made to the UI and game systems in this most recent push. It occurs to me that the real-time strategy genre is basically all user interface. I've spoken on this channel before about my inexperience with creating functional user interfaces for games. I think it's pretty normal for game developers. I know a lot that dread the inevitable implementation of UI and leave it to the last minute or just don't prioritize it. But based on the nature of this game, the UI is going to need a little love. So this is what the UI looked like in 2021. I knew at the time that this was placeholder and subject to change, but wow, look at it, it's gross. As the iterations on the game came and went, the UI slowly started taking shape. But the problem is, if the game isn't completely designed, how does one know where to put the buttons? And further to that, what buttons to even include? So now that the game loop is defined and closed, the next step is to lock in these designs. So this is how the game UI is looking now. I think it's safe to say that there has been an improvement. One of the main jobs was to create a consistent language for the UI. It's important to communicate to the player what can and can't be done, and that certain buttons do certain things. So there's this new GUI shiny shader over all the buttons that can be pressed to let the player more easily know what's available to them. And any buttons that can be pressed will exist within this vine-like border, whereas the stone border has no gameplay elements within it. The sizes of the UI elements have become consistent, so there's a small button and a large button, and a meta non-gameplay button. All buttons fall into one of these categories and have a particular look. I've reduced the number of buttons used to control the time scale of the game. Before I had a little panel with the fast forward, regular speed, and the start wave button all included. I have ditched the panel in favor of a simple toggle switch that goes between the game speeds to free up more space at the bottom of the screen. This meant I could put the start wave button by itself and make it a bit more obvious what you're meant to press to continue the game. So now it has its own place next to the minimap and a distinct blue color that is in contrast to the rest of the UI. The Grow Tree tool has been split off from the rest of the player's powers and into its own panel with 2 additional tree types, the Willow, which will have a huge boost to economic production if it's located near water, and the Smoky Oak, a tree that acts as a sort of landmine, whereby if it's chopped down it will explode and kill enemies in its vicinity. These additional trees have yet to be added to the game, but the blueprints are in place. Any cooldowns that a power might have are now represented in a more stylish radial slider as opposed to the traditional bar I had before. This has been extended to purchasing units during a wave. Now there's a 5-second cooldown after each unit is purchased to stop the player from spamming new units if they're getting overwhelmed, and to create more tension and make the player's choices more impactful. The unit panels have been updated, so now they're represented by an icon rather than text, and they tween in and out of position in a satisfying way. The majority of the tooltips in the game have been replaced with this more fixed tooltip that gives you contextual information about whatever you have selected. So currently the gameplay loop breaks down like this: build, fight, reward. The player starts the game with the ability to place trees and to start their initial grove. In this stage, the player can order units around, freely spawn units and add trees to the forest. Then in the fight stage, which begins once the player has pushed the start new wave button, enemies will begin to arrive on the map and the player has to defend their trees and wildlife until all enemies and units on the map have been destroyed. Then the reward stage arrives when the wave has been defeated and will provide a breakdown of their incoming resources for the next wave, as well as the option between 2 upgrades that will be applied to the rest of the level. One of the more impactful game design decisions that has been made is that in order to differentiate the game between its stages, a visual cue is required. So to achieve this, I created a switch between day and night. That is, under the cover of night, the player builds and rebuilds their grove while strategically positioning their units. Then, when the wave starts, it switches to daytime and the enemies begin to attack. This not only makes thematic sense, the workers arrive during the day and don't enter the grove at night, but also adds valuable feedback to the player about what stage they're in. While all of this was being developed, a major refactoring of the game's code base was required. Some of the code in this game is 2 years old and hasn't been touched much since then, and as a result, the systems and tools for me as a developer weren't created from the start. This means that a lot of the elements in the game weren't scalable and relied a lot on hard-coded solutions to various problems. Now that these changes have been made, it's going to make life a lot easier for me in the future for when it comes to making new levels and creating new upgrades, etc., using scriptable objects and more well-defined game managers. So a lot of the credit has to be given to Brendan for these changes. Without his insight, experience and support, this whole week-long project would not have gotten off the ground. So thanks for watching this devlog, everyone who stuck around this long. If you liked what you saw today, please consider subscribing to the channel. There will be plenty more updates throughout the year documenting my progress and milestones, and it's a pleasure to share the progress with all of you. So peace, love, Unity 3D, look after each other, laters.